So hello everyone, welcome back to another episode. So in this episode I'm going to be talking about ingredients of things and the different classifications of different kinds of food, and I'll talk a little bit about food addiction and the ingredients that can cause that as well. So let's get into it. So please stay until the end of the video because there'll be some interesting things about food addiction and what you can do about it and how it can make you feel and how the withdrawal will feel as well. So let's start with ingredients and the classification of different foods. So there is a classification these days of food which is non-processed, minimally processed, some processed or medium processing or some processing, highly processed, and then ultra processed products. So you get these different classifications. So unprocessed, minimally processed, processed, highly processed, and then ultra processed. Or you can also say refined. But in these different classifications, it's really about how many machines have been used and how much that item has been changed from its original form into its final form. So for example, if you take a grain, so a whole grain like an oat grain, so that grain, if you have the grain, that would be the unprocessed product if you have it still on the stalk of the grass that it comes from, because oat is a grass, wheat is a grass, so the wheat kernel, if you get that, that is the unprocessed product. So minimally processed would mean that kernel has just been rubbed out of its husk and you have that husk. So like the whole wheat before it gets milled. So that would be minimally processed. So as it moves on along the scale, processed would be it's a little bit changed. Highly processed, which means it will be into a powder. Sorry, let me just have some tea. So highly processed, which would be it has been through many processes, so it's gone to become a powder, so a whole wheat. Ultra processed would be like a white flour, where a lot of that original part of your wheat has been removed, so it's only the starchy part that's left. So that would be ultra processed, or if it has been added to like an instant cake mix, that would be an ultra processed product. So it's about how far along that factory stage it's gone. So if you look at a fruit, unprocessed would be you pick it from the tree and you eat it. That is unprocessed. Minimally processed would be it goes to a warehouse where it's washed or it's coated in some kind of a protective film or layer, or it's sprayed with some gas to slow down the ripening process, so it's put into freezers or stored. That would be minimally processed, and then put into bags so you can buy it at a store. That would be minimally processed. Then as it moves along, processed would be a sliced apple, for example, or a sliced or a peeled banana or pineapple. That would be minimally processed or processed. Then highly processed would be if that's changed into a jam or a syrup or some kind of a product. And then ultra processed would be maybe it's been dried and powdered, and then it's only the fruit sugar, the sucrose, that's been taken out of the fructose, and that is then what product is left, and it's added to something else. So an example of that would be a high fructose corn syrup. That would be an ultra processed product. So as you can probably gather from this stepwise naming of products from unprocessed to ultra processed, the level of health or how healthy it is for you decreases the more it moves along this process of processing. So an unprocessed product would be much healthier for you than an ultra-processed product by default, because it has all of its beneficial material still in it. So if you look at a fruit, it has the skin, then it has the fleshy inside part, and then in the middle usually is the seed. So a lot of the fruits you can also have the seed, and a lot of them you can also have the peel. So if you think of something like a watermelon, we generally don't eat the peel. You could, it's edible, it just doesn't taste very good, but you could eat it. Then you eat the inside fleshy part, and you can also eat the seed. So the entire thing is, you can consume it. The same with a pear or an apple. You consume the whole thing. Then something like a nectarine or a peach or even a cherry, you could consume the seed, but generally we do not. With bigger things, you can also not consume the seed because it's too big. And then with other ones, you could use the seed in cooking. So like jackfruit. Jackfruit, the seed is cooked and then you can eat it again. So different ways you can process things, and different parts of that unprocessed product is usually edible or non-edible. The further you move along this processing chain, the easier it becomes for your body to absorb or to use and to take up, especially the glucose, the sugar part. So if you are eating a raw apple from the tree, there's a lot of fiber in it. So that is holding on to the glucose and all the minerals and all the nutrients, and your body will work to loosen those and to get it out. So you have to use a lot of energy to get energy. Okay, so that will balance it out a little bit. So you are using energy to absorb energy, if you're following me. If you go down the line to something like an apple sauce or apple juice, the fiber has been removed. So let's talk more about apple juice. The fiber has been removed, the watery, sugary part is there. So you are drinking that apple juice, there's no fiber, so it's very, very easy for your body to absorb and to take it up. So it's going to be absorbing more of it, more easily, more quickly, and that's going into your blood. So you're not using as much energy to absorb it. More of it is going to be absorbed, and it's more likely that you have too much and then have to store it. Or if it's in its original form, it takes a little longer to loosen those bonds and to absorb it, and the fiber is moving along as well and helping for that to become absorbed. So there's not this instant glucose into your system, into your bloodstream. So it's a more, it's a slower release of energy. So that's not going to cause your blood sugar to go up and down. So as soon as your blood sugar goes up, your body wants to store. So it's going to secrete insulin, and the insulin is your storage hormone, or your fat storage. So it takes the glucose and it's going to store it. So then you build up fat the more your glucose goes up and down. So you want a gradient that is not as steep, so just a gentle curve. So that's why the unprocessed products are the best. Ultra-processed products tend to cause these spikes in your glucose because it's really, really easy to absorb that product, because everything's been taken away, and it's just that pure starch or glucose particles that are left. The rest have been removed. The fiber, lots of the minerals and the nutrients have been taken away, especially with flour, where it's only the inner kernel that's left with the carbohydrates. So it's high carbohydrates, high starch, high glucose. So that is very easy to absorb, and it will tend to spike your blood sugar. And it can cause lots of other ramifications in your body too. So I just wanted to talk a little about this processing process. So the difference between an unprocessed ingredient or unprocessed product and an ultra processed or a highly processed product. So it's how much it's been in a factory and how much it's been changed from its original form. Then we also need to be careful of the ingredients that get added that come from a laboratory. That's not a natural ingredient, because your body will not recognize something that comes from a laboratory that's not in its natural form. There are some things that it might recognize and can use, but generally the wild form or the unprocessed form, the natural form, your body will recognize and be able to use much more easily than something that comes from a factory or something that comes from a chemical lab. So all these things that you see that's added, that's just an E, a letter with something behind, or emulsifiers, or the strange kinds of starches, flavorings, stabilizers, all of those, that terminology means it's something that has been really modified or changed, or it comes from a lab, and those are not very good for you. It's been shown that they are harmful to your gut microbiome, and your gut microbiome is basically what keeps us healthy and what keeps us thriving. So we need to be very careful about the things that we put into our bodies. So when you look at a product and you see the ingredient list is extremely long, I would stay away from that product, because it would tend to go toward the highly processed or ultra processed kind of parts of this ranking. It's usually mostly more beneficial to stay to the unprocessed side of the scale, where things are just coming from its natural place, from a tree, from the ground, from the plant. So those are the most beneficial for us. So then I'm just going to touch and talk a little bit about food addiction and things that can be addictive. So usually it's the sugars and the salts, and then there can be the hormones and some of the protein molecules that could be addictive. So processed sugars can be addictive. Your body will crave them and want them, because it makes this instant feeling of happiness, of that high, the sugar high, because it's a very quick spike in your blood glucose and it releases serotonin. So your body gets used to it and it wants that feeling more and more and more. So highly processed, ultra processed products can be addictive due to the sugar content and due to the salt content as well. So salt enhances flavor, it brings it out. So MSG, monosodium glutamate, that's a kind of salt. So salt, any kind of salt, will boost the flavor, change how you taste, and change how your gut accepts food, and then it will make you feel good. So it increases that level of fullness and flavor. So that's also addictive. So sugar or glucose, sweet things can be addictive, together with fat, especially if they go with fat. They become even more addictive. The fatty sugar. Fat, if you just take fat and you eat it, it's not appetizing at all. It's terrible, it's gross. But if you add sugar to it, it becomes tastier. If you add salt to it, it becomes tastier. So it becomes much easier to eat a lot of fat, especially in baked goods. Sugar and salt get added, and that also gets added to the fat. So if you think of ice cream, the more sugar, the nicer it tastes. The more you eat, the more fat you are eating as well. So the dairy is another thing that's addictive, especially the ultra processed ones like the ice creams, the cheeses, because of the casein. The casein also can act in your brain as a serotonin lookalike, or it's similar to serotonin. So it can cause an addictive response. So that's why most people who go to plant-based, they continue craving something like a cheese or pizza, because cheese is on the pizza. So sugars, salts, casein is a protein molecule, protein molecules. So therefore animal products can become addictive due to these components in the protein and the hormones from the animals that can cause these responses in your body that lead you to feel nice, happy, but then also cause you to crave them and want them and become addicted to them. So the way to try to get rid of these is to eat a lot of the unprocessed goods and change how you taste and change the gut microbiome so that it's naturally secretes serotonin. So generally, carbohydrates, when you eat carbohydrates, it causes the release in serotonin. So the unprocessed products, the natural products, are high in carbohydrates. So there's no surprise that it will make you feel good and happy. So that's a natural way to feel happy, is to have lots of fruits and vegetables and plant-based products, which are high in fluid, high in carbohydrates, high in fiber as well, and have a density of nutrients, vitamins and minerals. Then some other things that are also addictive, like caffeine, it's best to cut those out and maybe exchange them for something like a nut or a seed or another product that is a little healthier for you, or rooibos tea, a juice. You also get other kinds of teas, corn silk tea, or there are different kinds of fruit teas, hibiscus tea, rosehip tea. There are many herbal teas as well that can be more beneficial to you than coffee. Okay, so that was just a little short video about additives, processing, and food addiction. Just in very short. If you have more questions, please post them below. You can email me as well. My email is here. Please like, subscribe, share to your friends, to anyone who you think it would benefit. And as always, stay healthy, and to God be the glory.